Welcome to Season 2 of Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. I'm your host, Rebbecca Hemmings, and in this short but powerful season, we're tackling the big topics leading with cultural humility, racism, discrimination, and a deep dive into sexual harassment in the workplace. If you're a leader or HR professional who wants to create a safer, more inclusive environment, you're in the right place. Now, let's get started. Welcome back to the Compassionate Cultures podcast. So I'm Rebbecca Hemmings, your host. And so what you're about to hear is a continuation of my look into the Health and Wellbeing at Work show, which took place this March at the NEC in Birmingham. All right, so I was listening to conversations I was learning. And so in this episode, I'm going to share with you what I learned around the issues around men's health at work and also menopause. So this will be particularly of use to you if you're working in HR, in management, or generally as an employee and you just don't understand what's going on with those people over there, those men, what are they making a fuss about, or what are those women who are going through perimenopause and menopause making a fuss about. Listen up and learn. So, there's been loads of sessions I attended. I want to talk to you about a session that I was curious about and I didn't know much about, and I thought, you know what, let me go and learn. So I went to a session on men's health networks. So I know a lot about women, I know a lot about diversity overall, but I'm being very open and honest. I don't know everything, and where I don't know about something, I want to learn, right? So the speakers here were speaking around, and I'll tell you who was speaking, because that's only polite, right? It's polite to let you know, right? It was called Launching a Male Staff Network, and this was led by Mark Brooks OBE, Senior Policy and Communications Advisor on Men's Health, and Richard Knight, who's a Senior Risk Manager Nationwide, at Nationwide, right? And so what did I learn? I learned that, firstly, why does men's health matter? Well, when men's health isn't thought about, it can harm productivity, obviously, because they're off work. It can harm internal morale, and that it's becoming more and more a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations, and it also harms wider society. And what I didn't know, some facts that they shared, I didn't know that 1 in 5 men do not live to the age of 65. I'm interested in how that compares to women also, but just as they said, it's not a competition. So I'm not interested from that perspective, but it would just be useful to kind of get some sort of baseline, like how does that compare to women? So 1 in 5 men do not live to the age of 65, and I think that's really high. 40 men die every day by suicide. Now, I did know the suicide levels in men are quite high. I didn't know it was so high. And I suspect, again, it's because some of these problems that aren't being discussed. 1 in 8 men has a common mental health problem. 1 in 8. Wow. And 10 men, again, another statistic I didn't know about, 10 men every month die in a fatal injury at work. And I suspect because men do a lot more, overall do a lot more dangerous physical work than anyone else, that will be the reason for that figure. So these speakers were really advocating for having men's health networks so that they can discuss mental health, they can discuss issues, physical health, and anything that's going on for them, and process some of that information in a safe space. So one thing that's not really spoken about, and I've not heard very much about this, but there is an International Men's Day and a Men's Health Week. Now, I don't know when Men's Health Week is. That's something I haven't yet looked up. But the International Men's Day is the 19th of November. So if you didn't know that, there is a day. So if anybody ever says to you, well, why is there an International Women's Day? Shouldn't there be one for men? There is one. It's on the 19th of November every single year. Just Google it. It will come up for you. And so what do I think about all this? I think I am pro-woman because I'm a woman and I see the societal issues. I see the gender discrimination. However, there is also space to have conversations around the problems that men have, the ones that I mentioned. No one can ignore those statistics. And so I certainly wouldn't say that, you should obviously not have space for men. I think it is important. I'm being a woman. I don't have that direct relationship or experience to be able to enter into those conversations. Just as with any unique group, you want to make sure that there are safe spaces. Now, there is a question around safe spaces which came up, which wasn't really answered, and I'd love to know the answer. So the question was asked around, how are safe spaces created for people who with various intersections. So if you're a black man or a disabled man, or you're Muslim and so on, because you can imagine if you're from these groups but you don't feel safe, you think that there might be an element of Islamophobia, racism, ableism, and so on. You're not necessarily going to feel safe to access those groups. And so where does that come in? Where does that come into all of this? Now, as I said, the speakers were asked this, but unfortunately, the question wasn't answered, whether for lack of time or lack of knowledge, I don't know. But that's something I'm really keen to hear about, because this is not the first time I've been to this type of conversations around focusing on men and their particular needs, but I'm yet to hear about the spaces that are intersectional and that are safe for all. And so if there is anyone listening who can speak to that, I'd be really interested in having you on the podcast to talk about that. Okay. I thought I'll go backwards a bit and talk about why it's important, or why DEI is an important feature of health and well-being at work, because I know not some people get the connection. Um, and that's because when people feel as though they don't belong to an organization or belong to an environment, their well-being suffers. If you can imagine being somewhere where you feel as though you're not understood, you're not liked, you don't fit in, your needs aren't seen to, certainly not prioritized, it can lead to poor mental health. It can lead to you feeling despondent, disconnected, not a part of the team. There can be lots going on, intrusive cognition, constant thoughts going on in your head about, what you said and what was perceived, and, thoughts about the negative stereotypes people have about you, and how you cope with that, how you respond. And so it also affects the way that you are able to participate in the working environment, how you're able to do your job, and so on. So it is a vital part or component of your health and well-being in the workplace, and as from an employer's perspective, it's really important to understand that obviously people do have these problems where they don't feel included, or that if there isn't much diversity. Again, there is this feeling that these problems need to be addressed, right? And so that's why that's the connection there in a very short sense. So, another session I attended was around menopause. So quite a few sessions today around menopause. I thought, let me go see what I can learn, and I'm really sorry. I apologise to the speakers. I can't find your names on the information I was given, but anyway, brilliant session, and it was a female doctor, or a previous doctor, and also a previous manager who'd had a lot of workforce that was mainly made up of females. And so they spoke from their experience about what works best for menopause. So just a few points that I wanted to share that I thought would be useful to hear. What was said was that it's really important that as employers, you're making sure that you're making reasonable adjustments for women who are going through the menopause.
and a lot of people won't have thought about this, but some of the adjustments that they recommend are such as enabling women to take regular work breaks. Sometimes, again, because a lot of women get hot, and have them sit closer to windows if they want to. This particular manager, he put in a fridge so that people could have refrigerated cold water as and when needed. Then he made considerations about whether people could work from home, and there was a flexibility around whether they could take time out. And he did speak about the fact that there are a lot of managers who are not women, but are men who will still need to have these conversations with women, and therefore he says, of course, what you want to do is to educate yourself as much as possible, because menopause impacts everybody. Everybody will have somebody in their family that goes through this, will know somebody at work. So it impacts everyone. And I asked the question around, because he said he had a lot of conversations with men who didn't initially get why some of these women who didn't choose to disclose, their condition for various reasons. Why are they going for breaks? Why are they getting more breaks than I am? Why are they allowed to take more time, or whatever it might be? There was a bit of friction, and so he had to sit down and educate a lot of the male staff on menopause, and therefore to put it into context. And so I asked the question, do you think that is better coming from a man than it is coming from a woman? And he said, being frank, I do think it is better, because sometimes men can be overwhelmed, or I'm putting words in his mouth, but this is what I got from him. Sometimes men can feel either overwhelmed, or feel as though the woman doesn't quite understand their position, whereas a man can better communicate with fellow men what some of the issues are. And I guess to a certain degree, it's a safer space for them. So I just thought for all that was very interesting. I also learned that for women, just on another not unrelated note, but for women who are taking HRT, who are able to take HRT, apparently there is one prescription you can get for progesterone and estrogen per year, as opposed to getting prescriptions every 2 months. Apparently you can just go to your pharmacist and ask. So I thought that would be really useful for some women to hear that, so I'm passing that message on. But that is the session that I attended on menopause, and hopefully that's useful to you. That's it. That brings me to the end of this episode of the Compassionate Cultures podcast. Hopefully that was nice and useful to you. I just wanted to get in and out there with the questions, with the learning points. If there are any questions, feel free to leave a comment on whatever platform you're receiving this information, and you can always email us. Go to our website, strawberrywords.co.uk. So until next time, bye.